Last time on Mighty Car Mods, we pulled a broken engine out of a Subaru.
Surprise, surprise. And this episode, we're going to put a fixed one back in.
Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. In this episode, of course, we're fixing up a broken Subaru, and no doubt we've got a lot of Subaru owners watching today.
Yeah, it seems like a thing that happens, almost like a rite of passage of owning a even mildly modified Subaru, or in this case, basically stock.
But you've never broken any Subaru bits?
No.
Neither have I.
Never. Except that one time. So last time you probably saw our red Gen 3 Subaru Liberty. We worked out that the engine is cactus, useless, broken bits in it, big ends, bearings spun, bits of metal all through it, and it's useless. So we've been waiting for some parts to arrive, and arrived they have. And that is a very heavy weight. It says fragile, but still weighs like 50 kilos. That is a Subaru EJ207 short block.
Really heavy.
Is it? Short block means all you get is basically the cases, some pistons in there. You can. The pistons in there. Pretty much all our bits that are broken, that replaces them. It looks a lot like this, but there's all stuff missing. So today, we have to extract all the bits from this engine that's still useful, oil pickups and pipes and whatever else.
And put them on this one.
That's it.
And
then hopefully get it in the car.
And then put all the other bits back on.
Everything back together, manifolds, the whole lot, plumb it all up, put it back in the car, drive, and not do skids because it's an auto Liberty.
And we've got Mechanical Steve here to help us. So Benjamin, this is a 2-litre engine. Why do we use this instead of a 2.5 litre? Like the car came originally with a 2-litre engine, right?
In this current configuration, it was always 2-litre, but
before that it was 2.5 NA.
Yes.
Okay. But it came to us like this.
2-litre turbo.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so why are we doing a 2-litre turbo now instead of a 2.5 litre?
The 2-litre stuff's actually way stronger. So if you got a 2.5 version out of the same box, there's piston problems, sometimes block issues. Sealed freshness.
All the way from Japan.
Factory assembled.
Always cut away from your mechanical stig. So Benny, what's involved in this process? Do you just like ring Subaru and go, can we have an engine please? Like, is this an easy thing to get?
Yeah, they're pretty easy to get. I sell these ones.
Yeah.
But these are the go-to because a lot of guys have tested different short motors over the years, and these are the best 2-litre setup. So they come with factory forged pistons.
Yep.
And they also have a semi-closed deck, whereas the original block that we were using was an open deck block.
Like the Focus RS, of course.
Of course.
Head gasket. And Benny, we do believe that you can obviously buy an engine from the wrecker. That's where this one was from, and this is where that ended up, just so everyone's kind of clear. So this is a way of just going, well, this is just going to work. How much was this?
These retail for about $27.50.
Okay, and from the wrecker?
About the same.
Really?
But being that this comes only as a block, whereas the wrecker engine's obviously complete as removed.
Yeah.
But the issue you have with a wrecker engine is you don't know the history of it. We actually thought we were doing the right thing by buying something that looked like it had been rebuilt.
Yeah.
And it's most likely actually what killed that engine is being poorly rebuilt.
Yeah, okay. Maybe by like YouTube DIYers or something.
Maybe, yeah. Did you rebuild it?
No, the actually only time I've worked on something like this was when I was doing the 2.5 litre for Miss Daisy. And that you were saying that's like physically the same shape but different in here, is that correct?
Yeah, so all the block external dimensions are exactly the same between a 2 and a 2.5.
Yeah.
They're actually the same all the way between the 1.3 litre all the way to the 2.5.
Yeah, right.
So it's basically Lego. But the problems you can have putting 2-litre heads on a 2.5 block is the compression goes really high unless you modify the cylinder head. So obviously then it restricts you to more or less E85, which can create problems and stuff. So We're going to stick with the 2 litre.
Marty's just over there. Don't say anything bad about E85.
85's fine.
He can hear us. E85's
85's great.
It's so convenient.
I like it.
So pull stuff off that, put it on this.
Yep, we're going to swap all the necessary external bits off that. We do have a new oil pump to go on it. We're also deleting the oil cooler.
Yep.
We don't need it, being that it's an automatic standard setup. It just doesn't need it. And the other option is to buy a brand new one of those, which is about $700.
Yeah.
And you cannot really reuse that one because this particular engine's had a bearing failure. It'll put bearing material into that old oil cooler.
Yeah, okay.
So then the second we bolt that old oil cooler to our brand new engine
It's just
and
sending
then
that metal
start
to
it,
it.
it then just basically creates all these problems by putting new engine full of old metal.
Yeah, cool.
Speaking of old metal, our old heads have been to the machine shop and are getting completely reconditioned. This is a specialised process requiring exact measurement and fitting. We're replacing the block of our engine with a complete new assembly from Subaru, but by reconditioning our heads, we can save some money on buying new ones. We can then make sure that our reconditioned heads and valve train are perfectly within spec, making our engine as close to brand new as you can get without spending big dollars on an entire thing. It's also worth mentioning it wasn't our heads that failed, but bolting them back onto a new engine could lead to problems down the track. This process ensures they won't leak or fail prematurely. First, each valve is measured and then ground so it will seat correctly in the head. Next, the head is getting skimmed. This uses a machine that perfectly flattens the surface that sits onto the block with a head gasket in between. If this surface is uneven due to warping, it can lead to blown head gaskets, among other problems. The machine only removes the tiniest amount of metal. If you go too crazy, you end up bumping up your compression ratio, or worse, you have things hitting your pistons. An important part of the process is also completely cleaning the heads top to bottom in a hot bath. The cams are then ground with a cork linisher, polishing the mating surfaces so they spin freely. The heads are then reassembled and checked, but we'll need to remove some of these bolts to get it back onto the block. Lastly, valve springs are reinstalled using assembly lube and some custom-made tooling, along with the buckets that sit against the cams. About 2 hours later, we have some freshly reconditioned heads ready to be bolted back onto our short block, which costs less than half the price of a brand new set from Subaru.
Our heads have arrived back from the machine shop. It's a pretty crazy process. There's a lot of very accurate stuff that needs to happen that unfortunately you can't do yourself with these. Well, you might be able to if you're a total genius, but I definitely can't. So they're back, which is exciting. Now these are the same heads that came off the old motor. We're recycling them because, to be honest, heads are expensive. Ones that will bolt straight onto this motor. It is possible you can buy a short block and then buy heads, but then you're at like crazy money. You might as well just go buy a new Subaru, which is pretty exciting. So everything's back in there and pretty much ready to go. So the idea now...
You could buy a Nissan for the cost of that engine over there and all these bits. You could just buy a whole Nissan that already
definitely
works.
couldn't buy your Nissan for that money.
What do you mean? I don't own a Nissan anyway. I own a Datsun.
You own a Datsun according to the Roads and Traffic Authority, whatever they're called this week. So this is awesome. That's all been checked, clearanced, everything's going to work. We're just going to slap it back on our short motor. It's going to take 5 minutes.
Really?
No, it's going to take heaps long. But we have everything here, hopefully, to complete the task. By the way, this kind of work is bread and butter for Subaru mechanical workshops, isn't it? Like, this is just, oh, I was driving my Subaru and it made a funny noise. And this is every day. Oh, and cool, have you got a boost controller? Yeah, and I was just testing it and I turned it up a bit.
Do you check your oil every single day?
Did you check your oil? Oh. Last time I checked.
Do you check your oil every single month? No.
No.
Do you check your oil ever?
No. Oh, you know, I just took it to the track, and oh, you know, how long since you got it serviced? Oh, I think 2014. And this is just what happens. And Subaru Motors, you know, if you don't love them,
and you know what?
They'll bite
this is why that exact thing is why cars are not as fast from the factory as they could be. It's because they know that you're not going to give a crap about it once you get it. It's true, isn't it?
A little bit,
because
yeah.
if they knew everyone was going to service them at the proper intervals, the cars would be faster.
And here's the thing,
It's
right?
a
So
fact.
say this was now 2004, and this particular engine and all this stuff was a year and a half old, it'd be a warranty thing. Like if it just randomly let go, not because of oil or lack of servicing, but if it just randomly blew up, Subaru would be up for all this. Being that this is now a decade and a half old, it's on us. But hopefully, with all the work that's gone into this and the fine, accurate machinery and a brand new short block, this should just work. And there's no reason why this shouldn't go just as long as an original motor should with the correct maintenance.
With the 6 arms and hands we have between us, the plan is to remove every last part we can use from the busted old block and then clean it up and set it aside ready to install onto the new motor, along with a bunch of new parts we have to replace because the old ones are full of metal chunks.
It just does what it's supposed to do, which is take this off.
Don't need that. Could get the other way.
No, it doesn't work. We've harvested most of the stuff we need from the bottom side of the engine. It's pretty cool being able to turn this over and see the boxing in action, but what you can also see, and we'll see if we can get a shot of it, is that. And that is just ground up bits of bearing and car and who knows what. It is aluminium. It really does feel like tin foil.
You know what you call that, Mark?
What do you call that, Benny?
Disappointment.
Disappointment. There's disappointment all through our engine. So what that also means is the oil pump, which is the part on the back here that we just pulled the pulley off, that's got to go in the bin. The oil pumps are not cheap either, but that one is most likely full of metal because that's where it sucks up all the oil through that screen. Anything that's smaller than that screen has gone through the oil pump, which is bad. So that's going in the bin. Next, we'll turn the engine over, we'll pull everything we need off the top of it, and then this straight in the recycling bin.
Really? Recycling? They turned into a fridge or something?
They probably would turn into a Kia.
Really? Is that what they do with them?
Yeah.
Afterwards?
Yeah.
You turn Subarus into Kias?
Yeah. Aluminium's worth good money. It gets sent overseas
Really?
with your tin cans that you recycle and
We
turn
also
into cars.
send all of our garbage overseas though.
A lot of our garbage,
There's no
yeah.
problem with that.
Yeah, no, it's not good.
Is that what we needed, Ben?
That's what we need.
That other one that we rounded off?
We flipping? Flip it. All right, this is where the oil comes out, isn't it? The random schmutz.
Powder just came out of that one. Oh!
All right, it leaked. Weed on the floor. Will that whole thing come off now?
Dude, I'm the one that wears shit shoes around here. That's my thing.
That looks like it's been out too.
Has been.
Is that factory?
Has to be out.
Oh, to get the pistons. We now have everything we need off the old, blown, rubbish engine. Thanks, man. I really needed a face wipe. And it's spewed oil all over our floor, which really sucks. So this can now go in the bin, and we're going to put our mad new EJ207 onto the stand and start loading it up with all the mad parts we just pulled off this one.
So we literally just load that stuff onto that one.
Yep.
And then put them on, and then put it in the car and don't do skids.
Sounds really easy, doesn't it?
It's still going to take a few hours though, right?
Do you know how much this would cost in the Subaru workshop, approximately?
$750.
Times 10.
Yeah,
It's crazy. Like you blow your Subaru engine, $7.5 grand.
that's insane.
Like it's a lot of labour and stuff involved doing it. It's unbelievable. Don't blow your engines, people. Or do whatever you want.
So wait on, is that like $5 grand of labour then? If that's like $2.5 grand for that.
Yeah, but you've also got a couple of $1,000 in reconditioning the heads. Then you've got all the, if you put genuine gaskets in it, oil pump, water pump, all this oils, fluids,
So pretty much
filters.
half the cost is labour and half is all your stuff.
I reckon. Because it's a good 2 or 3 days work by the time you reco everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a big job. All right, this is going in the bin. See you, mate.
Good luck in your Sorrento. I hope the rest of your life is a carnival.
Oh my God. It stings, man. That's a real stinger.
Oh no. What was it? Honey.
So early down there. All right. While the sump is getting cleaned out and while Mechanical Stig over here is getting our heads ready, I'm going to start putting together the oil pump. Fairly important part of any engine. Takes your low pressure oil from in your sump, turns it into high pressure, squirts it on everything, lubricates things, basically makes Subaru time travel possible. These things are not cheap. How much are these things worth, Benny?
That was about $270.
Yeah, it's a reasonable amount of money, and there's a lot going on in this little thing. But there's a couple of traps, and one big trap, Benny was telling me, is getting it out of the freaking... Why do they need so much of that? Is getting out of the bag. That's the oil pump. Crank spins that bit, squirts some oil around. Is these little O-rings. Now, one is an O-ring for the oil pump, and one is an O-ring for like a sump return, like low pressure. They look really similar, and they come in the gasket kit. If you get it wrong, this thing doesn't pump oil at any amount of pressure. You turn your engine over, you got no oil pressure, kablamo again, and you're up for another whole lot of thousands of dollars. So it's important that we use the right one and remember which is the right one. And it's very helpful if you do have a mechanical stick to point at it and tell you which one is the right one.
That one's a sump one?
That one. Don't want the sump one.
No, sir.
That one can be gone. And then this one goes in our oil pump. So I'm going to slap it on.
We've got ourselves a new oil pump, water pump and full gasket kit amongst other parts. These are really easy to change now, and recycling rubber gaskets doesn't usually end well. We're also being a little more reserved with our gasket goo so we don't end up with an oil pickup full of schmutz like last time. Some of the seals require lubrication, so we're using the same grade engine oil that we'll be putting in when it's finished, which is Castrol Edge 5W40. The dent in the sump isn't big enough to cause problems with the oil pickup, but while it's off, we're going to bash it out so it looks right. It's then a matter of cleaning everything well, reapplying our gasket goop and assembling the parts back onto the new block. The machine shop loosely attaches the cams, bolts, retainers and everything else so nothing gets lost in transport. To reattach the heads to the block, we need to remove the cams to install brand new head bolts. Using a calibrated torque wrench, the head bolts are torqued up in sequence and in stages to the correct spec. It's really important to do this well to ensure a good seal between the block, head gasket and head. The cams can then be reinstalled and we can start on the other side of the engine.
We've put the heads on the block, everything's looking good. We're getting down to the nitty gritty now of putting in like rocker cover, gasket and bolts and sensors and all this small stuff. And the more we're digging, the more we're finding stuff that's just a little bit dodgy. So we're getting to the point now where we think if the motor that went into that car had not been rebuilt and was just like a factory engine, there's a very good chance we wouldn't be doing this.
It still would have been running, man. There's so much sealant just built up on stuff for no reason.
Yeah.
Over a 10-cent O-ring.
And yeah, right. So you put an O-ring on it,
Just replace the O-ring and
yeah.
it wouldn't have been like that's. I honestly think what killed it is all this extra loose sealant has gotten into the oil pickup or into the oil pump, and, or even in a main gallery in the block, and that's what starved that engine of oil.
Yeah, clogged something.
Because there's nothing else. Looking at it, like there's no cracked oil pickup. The screen's not blocked now. Like it's eaten something.
Yeah.
And killed it.
Yeah, which is just luck of the draw because it was a wrecker engine. So sometimes you get lucky, like in the 240, it's a good engine. Supergram's even good engine.
Barry from Gumtree hooked us up with those ones, but on this occasion he was on the glass
On
barbecue.
this one, not so good. But the good thing is we're now fixing all that and we get a chance to go through and just sort of like pull the sealant off and clean everything up. Brake cleaner is pretty magical for getting that old sealant off. You just soak it, sit it there, and then it just sort of falls off. So we're going to keep pumping through it. Just keep attaching things to the engine and keep putting all these bits on. We're going to try and get the timing belt on before the sun goes down, which is very soon. And then we'll be putting this engine back into the vehicle.
All the old sealant needs to be completely removed before we can reattach all the parts. The rubber gaskets on the rocker covers are renowned for leaking on Subarus, so we're putting on brand new genuine items and using Benny's Slaz the Corners trick to keep them sealed up.
Our engine is coming together nicely. We're putting in all our hoses and crossover pipes and sensors and knock sensors and AVCS solenoids, all that kind of fiddly stuff. Pretty much all we're going to do now is throw the timing belt on, which there's a video about, and we're also going to throw our top manifold on, which is also another video about, which we'll link. And then this is just about ready to drop back into the car. So we're going to smash through as much of this as we can tonight and hopefully get it into the car tomorrow.
The timing gear is what syncs the pistons and cranks with the cams to open the valves at the correct moment. It works with the cam and crank angle sensors so the ECU knows when to squirt fuel and when to fire a spark. There are alignment marks on the casing of the engine and the sprockets to tell you where everything goes. A new timing belt, pulleys and tensioner means this engine will be good for another 100,000 kilometres before it's due to be replaced like any other Subaru on a scheduled service. And that can be done with the engine still in the car. After a solid day's work and some help from some mates, the engine is back together and complete, ready to be reinstalled into the car on the next episode of Mighty Car Mods.